So we are in a business called Sample Room, and we have another business called Pattern Room, which is what we had met Debbie through last year. So Sample Room is a product development house for the fashion and textile industry. So my trade is a pattern maker. And in our business, people come to us with design ideas to make garments or products. It could be dog harnesses or handbags or
tents. We're
making a teepee at the moment, and baby rugs. And then we create the pattern and we create the sample. And then when they need other sizes, we grade the pattern and create the specifications. So we get everything ready for someone to take that idea to a manufacturer. We also do small run manufacturing in our workroom. We are first and foremost a development house, but we offer manufacturing primarily because we have a program called the Fashion Label Launchpad, which is for startup designers. So it's sort of an additional service we offer to them because they find it very hard to get into manufacturers because it's a bit of a dying art. So I've been in the industry for about 28 years, but I've been sewing since I was 10.
Which is not bad for somebody who's only 30, so started very young.
Very, you'll keep. And I started the Sample Room nearly 13 years ago as a way of sort of taking all my knowledge and putting it into one spot and working with a variety of people and products. I'm quite lucky that in my career, I've had a very unusual career for I think the UK is a little bit different than what we are in Australia, but in Australia, of course, about 20 years ago, everyone rushed offshore to China. And so I've got a really unusual skill set that I really understand local production, whereas most of the people that are my age in the industry don't. They know how China works, but they don't know how to work with pattern makers and cutters and how to source fabrics and trims and what's involved in talking to manufacturers about ratios and color grids and things like that. And then some years ago, I came up with a wonderful idea that I thought was going to be so easy that has consumed my life called Pattern Room, because we realized that there's a real shortage in the world of pattern makers. It's not just Australia. I think it's the UK as well and the US. And we have a lot of people come to us and say, I just need a T-shirt. And I thought, well, I'm so busy to sort of say no to a T-shirt. And we also had a lot of custom sportswear companies call us up and say that they've got 2,000 patterns and nothing really works. So traditionally what happens within these companies is, and then you have custom sportswear in the UK too, they would have a team come to them, they'd say, oh, we're moving from another company, we've got a singlet or a T-shirt, can you do a pattern? They'd make that pattern and it would really stand alone. And then the next year, someone else would come with their T-shirt and they'd do the same thing. And that process involves going to a pattern maker. We nickname these type of pattern makers Beryl because they're often very old and they're ready to retire. And they trace off the pattern and they don't really know about technology or how digitizing works or computer pattern making. So they trace it off and then someone else scans it in and they create a pattern. But they end up with a whole mishmash of patterns in their library. So they end up with 2,000 patterns, where one might be 3 centimeters longer than the last one, or one might be slightly different. Because in the fashion industry, for every garment that has been made, a pattern has had to be made. And there's a lot of inefficiencies in the industry where they just keep on making unique patterns all the time. Whereas the way my brain works, which is very systemized, I thought we can systemize this thing. And so we've created a website of really stock patterns. So we've gone down the road ourselves of thinking about what are the different fits of a T-shirt. You can have a tight fit, a slim fit, a regular, a loose, and an oversized. There's different armholes, different necklines, different sleeve lengths. And so we have fitted that pattern and then created it and graded it. And then we have put that in as a digitized pattern in our system. So if you wanted to buy a V-neck cap sleeve T-shirt with a shirt tail hem and you wanted to put a print on it, you could buy that pattern. It would be downloaded as a DXF and an AI file. You can put your graphics on there and then you can send that through to print and you've got a T-shirt that fits beautifully. Yes, so we've been doing that. I've probably been working on that for about 8 years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'm merely the boring accountant that sits behind the scenes and counts all the money. I wish that were actually true, but I joined the business to help Julia take this to the next level and launch it globally. So I joined the business about 3 years ago, and yes, I am an accountant. I apologise for that in advance. We intended to launch it in the US, as we're talking about, and also at Sportswear Pro at FESPA in Madrid last year, and that obviously didn't quite go to plan. But what we've done with this idea of Julia's, and it really is this idea of, like, I'm wearing the stock standard polo shirt, the polo shirt.
It's a pattern room pattern.
It is a pattern room pattern, which is it's the polo shirt that you think of when somebody says a polo shirt, you go, oh, exactly that. So every sportswear company, every corporate wear manufacturer that's out there, anyone at all that wants a polo shirt, they do what Julia says. They go to Beryl, and Beryl draws up a polo shirt for them, and they make a sample, and then they go back and they change the pattern, and they go back and make another sample. And this happens over and over and over again. And hey, presto, now I've got a polo shirt. Well, the problem is every pattern maker in the world has made 50 or 100 or 200 polo shirt patterns in their life. Why reinvent the wheel? I've done it. It works really well. Why not just replicate that so that others can have that same pattern? We quite often get asked by people about, well, if I buy that polo shirt pattern and somebody else buys it, somebody else has got the same thing as me. But the cold hard reality is, you're going to make it out of different fabric.
You're going to do a unique print.
You'll put a unique print on it, or embroidery, or something like that. So it's going to look different anyway.
And also the body that goes in it makes it look different.
But yeah. So if you've got two people standing next to each other and wearing a garment that's made from the same pattern, but out of different fabrics, it's going to look different because their body shapes are different as well. So it's going to be impossible to actually tell it's come from the same pattern. So Julia's systemized brain has come up with this mechanism that allows Julia and her team, because there is a team, to actually extrapolate out all of these things. So a T-shirt, for example, can have a number of different collars or necklines, can have a number of different sleeve lengths. It can have a number of different hems. So it can have a straight hem or a split hem or a shirt tail. So there's lots of different combinations of parts of the T-shirt. What that's fundamentally meant is we're now at 16,000 versions of a men's T-shirt, which is craziness. Absolutely crazy.
Yep.
So there's 16,000 versions of a women's T-shirt. There's 16,000 versions of a kid's T-shirt. There's 16,000 versions of a women's plus T-shirt. So we get into the plus sizes as well. So the database, the catalogue, the database is sitting at about 220,000 styles at the moment. I know it's mind-boggling.
Yes.
And all we have up there at the moment are T-shirts, singlets, jumpers, pullovers, if you like, jackets,
tracksuit pants,
tracksuit shorts, and leggings. So we don't have this massive range of different types of products yet. We're working on it. So probably the next things that will go up will be swimwear, which is not ideal for you right at the moment, heading into the northern winter.
You are, yes.
But come March, April, as you're coming out of winter, that's the time that these custom sportswear makers, that's where the swimwear manufacturers will be starting to think about making their product in readiness for that upcoming season, because you need that little bit of a lead time. So all those competitive swimmers out there will be starting to think about, I need a new bathing suit for my competitive swimming or water polo or whatever it happens to be. So it's sitting at about 220, just over 220,000 styles at the moment. That's growing. Not every day at the moment. We've taken our foot off the accelerator just for the time being. But when Julia and I sit down and look at the roadmap of where we want to go with this, and we're not even focusing on fashion, we're really focusing on clothing, for want of a better word, the sorts of things that people are going to wear every day and not into that fashion field. We're looking at somewhere around 6 million different patterns.
It's huge. And even though we've concentrated with custom sportswear, that's primarily because custom sportswear don't think of themselves as designers. They just want to make sure it fits properly. And so they don't have this element of, I want it to be unique or tweak this or change that. But as you know, the world of fashion, surface print design, and I'm very jealous that you're in where you are. I love surface print design. I just think it's the way of the future. It means that people who can create beautiful designs, they can put it onto a t-shirt. They can put it onto a knit skirt. They can put it onto a dress. And the designs are quite simple. So, they're going to be looking for something with less darts in them, so they don't have to worry about placement of prints. And so people who traditionally would be making a picture to go on the wall can start making art that's more wearable and people can purchase. So it really allows people to expand out their product range really easily.
It does. And you'll know this as well as anyone, really, that the cost of that technology is coming down all the time. And it's getting so much better.
Yes.
Dye sublimation printing, Debbie, you know this, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, a dye sublimation printer was too expensive for a business to buy. Now they're relatively inexpensive. In fact, they're actually quite cheap. And the quality of what they're doing is amazing. The ink technologies are incredible. You're playing with some of this amazing technology there, I know at the moment. In fact, just last night, Julia and I were watching, because it's a good time for us, because it's Melbourne Fashion Week is on at the moment. We're not actually in Melbourne. We're in regional Australia at the moment. But Melbourne Fashion Week is on, and there's a special section for First Nations artists. And we got to see some of that last night on the TV, which was fantastic. So, as Julia said, the clothes that the models were wearing were really quite simple designs. There was nothing really outrageous with them. But the art that was printed on those garments was truly astounding. Really, really brilliant stuff. So it is one of those things. Do you need to have that high fashion type garment, or can you actually just use a simpler garment but make it really quite stunning with the art that you put on it? We're in the process at the moment, Julie. I just told Julia some numbers today, and she went a little pale about what we're about to do with Pattern Room. So you're the first ones to actually hear this, but we're changing Pattern Room quite significantly. The technology that we're using behind the scenes, the user experience, the whole website is about to be revamped quite considerably. And the money that we're going to spend on it, which I'm not quite sure where we're going to find at the moment, but the money that we're going to spend on it is going to make it a really quite a much easier process to find what it is that you're after, and also to understand where we're going with our roadmap of new styles that are going to be coming out. So much so that we're going to be incorporating augmented reality and artificial intelligence into the back end of the system. We've got plans for you to be able to take a photograph of a garment on a catwalk, or a person walking down the street, or on a mannequin in a shop window, and for our system to tell you what that pattern is, so that you can much more easily find it in the maze of patterns that we've got on the system.
One of the tricky things at the moment is there are so many patterns, so you have to search in a certain way. If you start scrolling, it looks like a sea of grey. And so there's a layered navigation that you can pick out certain fits or certain garments or certain features and then select your garment. But we know that it is quite tricky and a little bit overwhelming. Most people say, well, I just need a t-shirt. It's like, well, we've got a few to choose from. We need to drill this down. So there's a certain way to find what you need, and you think of the garment and think of the fit. We've also got a YouTube channel under Pattern Room that has a lot of videos that we created with garments on bodies to show the fit. It's got a variety of collars and lengths and sleeve lengths and things like that, but it was mainly the body shape that was the most important aspect of that.
Yeah, because the difficulty is we can't manufacture 220. I mean, even though we have our own workroom, we can't make 220,000 samples.
Nor can we store them.
To take photos. And part of this is the intention is not to make those samples if we can avoid it. So from from a paradigm shift in the industry, going away from using Beryl, who draws on the piece of paper and then you scan it and that process, to being able to buy a pattern online and have it in your inbox, within 48 hours is a really big shift in the way the industry works. Will be a big shift in the way the industry works as more people cotton onto it. But the other advantage, and there's a number of other advantages, and I know we talked to Debbie about this a couple of years ago, and one is the impact that our industry has on the environment, which you're no doubt aware is a sorry state of affairs, basically. One of the really great things about Pattern Room is it can allow people to skip that whole sampling process. So they can go straight from I need a polo shirt to actually making a polo shirt without making samples, alter that sample, make another sample. So we can avoid a whole lot of that process. The other really advantageous thing is that now, once you know what fit it is that you like, you can then buy a regular fit polo shirt, you can buy a regular fit bomber jacket, you can buy a regular fit tracksuit pant, and guess what? They're all going to fit the body the same way, because there's a consistency in what Julia and her team have done to make sure that regular fit fits the body in exactly the same way. So it's also going to help.
That's a really important point, isn't it, Daniel? That's such an. I mean, one of the biggest purpose waste is actually. Guys, it is because of poor fit. I mean, how many of you, all of us do it? We all buy. It's okay saying we're going to shop online, but shopping online is a really big problem if you're going to send it back. And more often than not, 40% of what's bought online goes back. You're doubling its carbon footprint. You're doubling so many things, so much waste in there. And it's really about fit, and that's because there's no consistency globally at all about fit. A size 12 here or 14 or this or that, or Julia will go into it much deeper and better than I ever could. Literally like the length of the arm, the distance from here to here, there is no consistency at all. And it's a big issue, isn't it? So your service will really help that.
Yeah. And I'm sure it's the same in the UK, but women's sport is just really expanded in Australia, in football and cricket and soccer, or round ball football, I think you call it.
No, we call it round ball football.
You call it football. You call it football. We have a different name for football, a different sport. But there's been a huge increase of women doing the sport, and a lot of the custom sportswear companies, they've used unisex patterns for women, and they've had women in tears who it just never feels right. And you probably know yourself, you can't wear a unisex unless it's totally oversized. And so they're really losing a lot of customers because of bad patterns, and they don't know where to get them, because that process of finding a pattern maker and going through that process is really quite painful. It generally takes about 6 months. We have people come to us who have been to maybe 3 or 4 pattern makers before. So not all pattern makers are the same. And so when we meet people who find Pattern Room, they're like, this is amazing. This is just like world changing. And there's very few people, I mean, no one else has done it in the world. And it's probably because I'm a little bit crazy that I've put in hundreds and hundreds of hours for no return, which is not what the pattern maker normally does in our industry. They get paid for every every hour that they work. But I really just wanted to improve the fit of garments. I really want to reduce landfill by reducing crappy garments in the world.
It's incredible, isn't it, how that kind of online world is going to connect. One thing, as one side of it develops, and you've seen that in the digital technologies over the last 4 or 5 years, really, this massive convergence of all technologies that are all speaking the same language, that all suddenly plug together, roll it back 3 or 4 years, and that actually wasn't as simple as that sounds, but now it's just daily becoming more and more simplistic for all of the technologies to talk to each other. And then that basically makes the supply chain much more transparent, because look at it, it's evening in Australia, it's morning here in the UK, and we're chatting on Zoom, and everyone's really happy to do that. You hop online, download a few patterns, rock up, talk about them. Do you like it? Don't you like it? And it's a completely different scenario to sending and shipping products around New York, lots and lots and lots of samples, and then, sending things over to the Far East back and two, even in a digital format. It makes no sense to actually manufacture and make so many physical patterns. As Julia said, working with each individual pattern maker has their own style, or they, as Julia said, they don't have the technology base to know the intricacies of specific fabrics and performances and things like that. So then when they are sewn and made, they still don't fit properly because they haven't gauged in how the fabric's going to behave. So look, that's correct, isn't it, Julia? There's
absolutely
so much to learn and so much to connect here. It's just, we're right at the very beginning, and I was so excited, Julia and Daniel, when I heard about what you were doing, because as a little girl, we used to walk up to the shops when I was a little girl, because my mum taught me to sew, and we'd go into the haberdashery shop, and I can remember fingering through all of the patterns, all the paper patterns in all of the rows and the rows and the rows, and mum would choose what she was going to make for the next few weeks for me or my sister or her. That's to be able to do that digitally and then add your own creativity to it, Keely, Evie, Sarah, is a really fantastic opportunity, isn't it? So how do you feel about what Daniel and Julia have told you today?
Yeah, it's really impressive. I'm quite impressed at the kind of like eco aspect you've got on it. I didn't really imagine that coming into play, but it's really interesting how much waste that would all reduce go through the process.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much.
It's something that we're incredibly passionate about. That sustainability side of things is, this has in theory the potential to reduce the impact of the textile and clothing industry. The waste that we're putting into landfill. Even last year, there was 100 billion garments made in the world, and a third of those never were sold to somebody. They went to landfill.
It's terrible.
So this over manufacturing.
100. Daniel, say that again. 100 billion.
100 billion garments were made in 2020.
In 2020, and a third were never used.
Third were never used. Third went straight to landfill. It is just unfathomable how bad that is. So if we can help reduce the amount of waste in that sampling process significantly, that's fantastic. That would be a massive tick. But imagine if we could actually get all of those manufacturers, or most of those manufacturers who are making as well, actually getting them to make clothes that fit well, rather than just making clothes. Then they wouldn't need to make 100 billion. Maybe they could get away with only making 600 million.
Yeah. When in my career, I've worked as a designer selling to big department stores. And often what happens in that process is a tech pack is made, first of all, and then that's sent to a factory overseas. And then you're reliant on how good the pattern maker is at that factory. And China's not fantastic at doing patterns. They actually don't like doing it at all, but they're not very good at getting balance right and knowing Western body shapes really well. And so a garment goes back and forth and you're making comments to try and correct it. But as you're going back and forth, your timeline is getting shorter and shorter. And so what you end up doing is saying, oh, look, just send it. That's okay. Even though you're not 100% happy with it. And so you get a whole shipment of thousands of T-shirts or whatever it might be, but it doesn't fit right. And I've spoken to people who work for big chain stores saying, oh, if you can just get a T-shirt right for me, I'd be so thankful. And so it really is a much bigger issue than what anyone thinks. And we know it from a consumer point of view, because you go into the shop and you're like, oh, the T-shirt keeps on falling backwards, or it feels like it's choking me, or the arm sort of cuts into when I move my arm forward, or whatever it might be. And they're all pattern making problems, but often people don't know how to solve that. So yes, quite detailed.
It's so interesting, isn't it? So Julia and Daniel, I believe you're happy then for the graduates to have a look at the pattern room, choose a garment each, which will fit in along with your geometrics brief, girls, and then work together. Julia, once you have to give Julia, I think 2 or 3 days, is it?
Yes.
From choosing a pattern.
Hours, yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. So if you could choose, you can pop online, choose a pattern. Julia will send you that pattern, and then we can work with Erica as well is over with you next week. Erica will help you with the Illustrator, etc., to get your patterns onto that garment. And then we will create fabrics, prints, garments, and we also create the DXF files as well, which means that you can use the cutters downstairs. So you'll be able to auto cut your patterns and garments as well. And then, of course, they've got 3 sewing machines upstairs now as well. Behind the storyboards, there are 3 sewing machines. You have a micro factory now. So you'll actually be able to choose, manufacture the perfect garment all in one little, well, not little, in your great demo facility over there at CMYUK.
We would love to see the final products as well. That would be, we'd be thrilled to see.
That's, yeah, absolutely. What we'll do, we'll circle back on this, and we'll do another mentor session, and the girls will do a presentation to you of what they've created and what they've made. Also, throughout the whole process, Taylor, who isn't showing in our video, in our screen, and is always behind the camera, bless him. Taylor doesn't get enough credit. He's always invisible. He's actually out of the office today. But Taylor will also video and record all of the different steps of the process. So you'll see all of that too. So it's going to be loads of fun, I think. What do you think, girls?
Right.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Thank you.
Yeah, excited to have a look at the different patterns.
Yeah, sure.
Did you have any questions? I mean, you're busy writing, but did you have any questions? It's a lot to...
It's great. I think we do have a couple of questions, maybe. I know, so I'm quite new to the industry in pattern cutting, and I wondered if you could give just an insight on your pricing of patterns.
Do you mean with pattern room or outside pattern room?
Well, a bit of both, maybe, what you do. Yeah.
So we sort of like talk about pricing as a full development price. So when it comes to full development, it would include the initial pattern, creating a sample, fitting that pattern, doing the alteration. Daniel's going to do a calculation to pounds for you.
Oh, calculated pounds for you.
So it's pattern, and then 2 samples with fitting and alterations, then grading it into a few sizes and creating markers, creating garment specifications, everything that's needed up until production. That ranges from Australian dollars, $700 for a t-shirt or a singlet, which is
about, oh, hang on.
gone the wrong way.
I've gone the wrong way. Why is it doing that?
And I say, I'll write down in Australian dollars first. $700 for a t-shirt or a singlet, through to maybe $2,500 for a tailored jacket, a shirt.
So about £365
for a singlet or a t-shirt.
Okay.
Your tailored jacket's $2,500.
So about 1,300.
And then maybe a shirt or a pair of trousers or a skirt or a dress is around the 1,500 Australian dollars.
Is around about £800.
Right.
With pattern room, it's about
pattern room is around about 2/3 the cost.
Wow.
And the biggest change is that to do that full development process, sample room takes about 6 months. With pattern room, it's 48 hours. So that's your biggest cost saving.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Thank you.
That's huge, isn't it? Yeah, it's a huge saving. It's incredibly accessible for everybody as well, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I think that's the key thing for me, to being able to drop on a pattern when you're putting a collection together. You know, even I guess so as well, you'll have people who will purchase your patterns and then they'll amend them themselves in their own 3D technologies. They do and they don't. We've had someone try that. The guy in Alaska has that, and it doesn't work so well. I think that the problem with the 3D technology is you often need to be a pattern maker and know how you can tweak and change the garment to then fit. Yes.
As far as altering the patterns, we don't recommend people alter it. We've had people do that before. Every now and then we get somebody call up and say, I've made your jumper and I can't get my head through it. I said, you didn't buy a jumper, you bought a jacket. And I was like, don't change the pattern. And the problem is that it comes through on the cut line, not the sewing line. And you already know that is different. And so if you tweak and change, recently someone said, I just graded it up. to the bigger size and said, we don't do a straight grade the whole way through, because people don't get bigger on their shoulders as they get bigger around their tummies. So there's a lot of sort of pattern making knowledge that happens in the program, and people think they can sort of dodgy it up themselves, but you're better off coming back and saying, okay, I need this one. Is there a different version of the t-shirt that's better for me, rather than trying to, because also then you ruin the integrity of the pattern. And it comes in as a DXF file. I'm not sure if you've seen a DXF file come in yet. It comes in with like millions of points, whereas a pattern doesn't have as many points. So we highly recommend people don't change the patterns, even though we have a lot of customers who try to get really great value from the pattern, and I'll buy one of everything and then I'll be able to Frankenstein it together, but they come unstuck.
I think that's a very, very valid point, isn't it, really, that we all I do too, you totally underestimate the amount of skill that is involved in making the perfect pattern.
Yeah. And even the time, it's I've had one client who bought a single size of a pattern. So we offer the patterns that are available for sale in a single size or in a graded set. And the graded set is generally 6 sizes. But we also sell a 12 size graded set. And I rang him and said, I was just curious, why did you buy a single size? Oh, I'm going to grade it myself. It's like, okay, great. How long is that going to take you? Oh, it'll take me 3 or 4 hours. Okay, right. What would you be doing otherwise? Oh, well, selling stuff. Okay, how much would you normally sell in 3 or 4 hours? Oh, $5,000 or $10,000 worth of stuff. Okay, well, for the extra $70, let us do the grading, and you can go and make another $10,000 for the business. Oh, okay.
Yeah. And when we grade a pattern, we measure all the graded measurements against every seam that it's sewn to on the sewing line, which you can't do when you have it as a DXF file. So there's a lot of checking and smoothing and tweaking and changing the whole way around to make sure it's a perfect pattern.
I don't touch that stuff.
Girls, you're going to have so much fun with this. It sounds great, doesn't it? Yeah?
Yeah, very excited to have a look.
Brilliant. Any more questions?
I did want to ask, related to that actually, if someone comes to you and they want one of your patterns, but they want to tweak it for like a style way rather than the size, would you potentially go through that process with them then to like add something, or would you recommend them just go with that base pattern?
They generally move into our sample room business, because we sort of leave pattern room as that pattern catalogue. We use pattern room patterns all the time in our sample room business, so it might be a base plus alterations, but we go down that path, but then you don't get the quick turnaround time, and it ends up going through, it moves into a different process where you'd make the pattern, you'd make it up in the fabric that they were thinking, you would fit it, so the price does bump up considerably, but we do have that service within sample room. And we do that for people all over the industry, and we've got clients overseas as well with that process.
We're actually working with a client at the moment that should be a pattern room client, but they're making the uniforms for a sporting team, which I can't name, that need to be slightly altered from the pattern room patterns. Yes. So they've been moved from pattern room into sample room. So Julia and the team are working in a one-on-one fashion with them. And because it involves a lot more of Julia's one-on-one time, the price goes up, of course.
Yeah, of course. Yep. Yeah, to pay for the skill, of course. Yeah. Fantastic. Julia, Daniel, thank you so much. It's been a joy to chat with you. Yeah. And we'd love
to meet you all.
Yeah, I'm so excited to see where we get to. It's going to be so much fun. That's good.
That's great. Have some fun. Let me know as soon as you can about what patterns you'd like, and we can get those organised for you. But yeah, looking forward to seeing what you come up with.